Don't you wish it was that easy? That there was, who used to have the easy button? Staples used to have the easy button. Don't you wish there's a simple button for life that would just slow everything down like that? You could just go burp and everything would slow down. But it doesn't work like that, does it? And you know what today is, September 1st. September! You know it's Labor Day. You know what that means. Here it comes. You know what's coming. Faster and more and bigger and earlier and longer and far, just more and more and more and more. And for those of us who have been at this a while, that just seems normal, right? And I think that's probably correct if you just take the dictionary definition of normal. The dictionary definition of normal is usual, typical, expected. Well, I think that probably sums up what the fall. And even if you don't have a kid going back to school, I haven't had a kid go back to school for a while, but it still ramps up and the pace just picks up. And we call that normal, and maybe it is. I have a better question though. Is it healthy? Does it give you life? Would you choose it if you had a different choice? Those are the questions that this series is going to delve into as we talk about how our spiritual lives and the pace of our lives are connected. So, what if someone told you that the number one reason that you wouldn't become the type of spouse or parent that you always hoped you could be was one answer, one thing? What if somebody told you that the one reason that you won't form the kind of relationships that you had always hoped to have was the same thing? What if someone told you that the number one reason that you won't find satisfaction out of life the way you had always dreamed of was one thing, and that thing was busyness? What would you say? Well, I don't know if they're right or not. I'm not smart enough to know that kind of stuff, but what if I told you this, that perhaps the number one reason that you won't grow spiritually is that same answer? Too busy. You're just too busy. One of my favorite authors, John Ortberg, is a pastor in California. He wrote this. See if you think he's right. John writes, I believe that millions of people will never reach their full spiritual potential. They'll never come to know and trust God the way they were made to. They'll never experience the kind of intimacy and connection in worship, never devote themselves to developing the giftedness that God has given them. And this will happen not because they defy God or don't believe in Him, but because they're just too busy. Is he right? Well, you don't have to listen to me or John Ortberg, but why don't we listen to some of the writers in the Bible? And let's look at how they connect the pace of our lives and the health of our relationship with God. Let's start here at Psalm 46:10. This psalm is written and it connects the dots for us. He says, be still and know that I am God. So there's a relationship, God bless you. There's a relationship between stillness and knowing God. I'm going to ask you a little bit later in the message, how good are you at being still? Some of you are already doing the math. It's not going to be pretty, right? Be still and know that I'm God. Jesus once said it this way. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you, what did he say? Rest. Yeah. I will give you hope and rest. Yes. How good are you at resting? That's even worse. I'm not asking how well you sleep. That's a different thing. Do you rest well? Well, perhaps this fall, as the fall starts to take off, and before you just do the normal thing, we could stop. We could step back, and we could take a look at too fast, too much, too many. And if we do it right, maybe those things won't be normal anymore. Maybe there'll be a new normal. Now, we're going to do each one of those in a week. Too fast, too much, too many. So we start with too fast today. And in order to start that topic, I want to ask you this question. What if the most spiritual thing that we could do, any of us, this fall, was to just slow down. I mean, there's lots of other spiritual things you can do, and I hope you will. You could join a small group like we've talked about. You could do Starting Point. Somebody told me before the 8 o'clock service, I'm going to Ghana with you. That's wonderful. You could do all sorts of spiritual things, and I hope you do. But what if the most spiritual thing that you could do this fall was just slow down? And my guess is that never even occurs to us, that that's a spiritual discipline. In fact, the speed of our lives tends to be something that we're completely unaware of, or at least pay any attention to. So let me take speed out of that area of life and put it into one that we're more used to talking about it in. Driving, okay? So now we're going to go with driving for a second, and we'll come back to living. But if you're driving, how do you know how fast you're going? Some of you are confused about this, which doesn't make me feel good about. This is not a hard question. The speedometer is how you tell how fast you are going if you're driving a car. Now, this is a harder question. How should you know how fast you should go? It's a speed limit. Somebody said cops back here. There's that's both and, right? So there's the sign, and then are there any police that are, in the vicinity? And so that sort of balances that out. Now, let's take it back into living. If you're living a life, how do you know how fast you're living it? It's tough. But maybe you look at things like worry, stress, anxiety, schedule. God bless you. And maybe we don't ever even remember to look at that speedometer. A better question, if you're living a life, how do you know how fast you're supposed to go? Are there signs? Is there a cop that will give you a ticket? You should probably be glad that there isn't, right? Those things are really important questions when I talk about the pace of our lives. And look, my guess is we don't normally even think about it. Consciously, never is something that I pay attention to. But I'm going to suggest the deck is stacked against us when it comes to faster or slower living. Because do you want to guess which way our culture tells us to go? Faster. There's very little love for slower. You can just look around. Some of you have been to Panera in the last week? Anybody? Yeah, they like one person raised their hand. I know the rest of you have been to Panera. You're just not playing along. So thank you, Galen, for playing along. So if you go in there and you don't want to take the time to go up and order and everything, they have this thing, and it is called rapid pickup. Anybody ever seen the leisurely pickup button? No, it's rapid pickup. There's no button that says, I'll just stroll in whenever I have a minute. No, that's not true. Anybody ever seen lately a commercial for slower download speeds? No, that's faster download speeds. Federal Express took too long to say, so we call it FedEx. You got all that time? Federal Express. Quicken Loans wasn't fast enough, so they had to rebrand the thing as Rocket Mortgage. Quicken wasn't fast enough, right? This on and on and on. The deck is stacked in one direction, and we don't pay any attention to it. If you want to lose weight, you go and buy some Slim. Where's the Slim Slow? You ain't making any money on Slim Slow. Why? Because, listen, unbeknownst to us, we have bought into this idea that faster is better without any proof that that's actually true, without even stopping to recognize what the cost-benefit analysis is. So I have a feeling, if you're anything like me, that we all probably are guilty of living life at a dangerously fast pace. But I'm not the cop. I'm not here writing tickets this morning. I'm a fellow journeyer that wants to think about what's the speed of my life? What should it be? And if that's you, you're in the right place this morning. Let's learn about it together. Because listen, it's not just a personal or a cultural problem. It's not. It's actually a spiritual issue. right? Don't you want to know what affects your faith and your relationship with God? I do. And this is one of them. In fact, Jesus put it this way. In a famous verse, maybe you've heard it quoted before, John 10:10. Jesus' invitation is this. He says, I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. One translation says, have it to the full. What does that mean? It means that Jesus' invitation is to give me life. All the life that we were created to live. That's a great promise. What usually doesn't get quoted, though, is what Jesus said right before that, which is pretty important. Before he said, I've come to give you life, he said this, there's a thief that comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. So, Jesus' offer is life, but there's an enemy of living that kind of life. There is an enemy to your spiritual experience of the life that God created for you. And here's what I've learned over the course of my life. If the enemy can't get you to not believe, he'll just get you to speed up so much that it doesn't matter what you believe. That it's not that you don't believe in God, you just don't have time for that to make any difference in your life. And what happens? Well, Jesus said, steal, it'll steal your joy. Kill, it'll kill your passion. Right? And so there's a choice to make. And no one can make it for you. That we have a choice daily of, am I going to receive the kind of life that Jesus came to offer, or am I going to let it be stolen from me? And one of the primary ways that it gets stolen is just, I'm too busy. So, I'm going to talk about that choice for the rest of the time that we have this morning. And the Bible talks about it in a lot of different ways, uses a lot of different word pictures. And I picked one that's maybe the most well-known passage in the whole Old Testament. My guess is everybody in the room has heard these verses somewhere before. And my guess, I'd go farther than that, is to say that the place that we use these few verses most often is in funerals. And I've done a lot of funerals, and very often I'll read Psalm 23 as a part of the funeral service because it gives comfort. They're very comforting words. And I find that somewhat interesting for our topic today because here's a mindset that I think is prevalent. See if you agree. I hear people say, they'll point out something that's not going well and they don't spend any time on, and they'll say, I know it's important and I will get to it when things slow down. And do you know when they get to it? Never. Because why? Things don't slow down. Do you know when things do slow down? When you die. They slow way down at that point. When you die. So, why don't we take the words that we usually read then and apply them to life now, before you die, so that we could experience the kind of life that Jesus came to offer. So we're just going to look at these 3 sentences that David wrote, King David, about the choices that he made in his life and how they can be choices that you and I make in our lives. So Psalm 23, if you have a Bible or want to open it up or turn it on or do whatever you do, I'm going to read from Psalm 23, verses 1 to 3. We'll put it up on the screen as well. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. This is God's word. And thanks be to God, because there are some life-giving choices contained in here. I just want to highlight them for you. It starts with this line. The Lord is my shepherd. I could preach on that for the next month and a half. But I got 3 more to do, so I'm going to keep going. But think about that line just for a moment. The Lord is my shepherd. And think about how that's a very basic choice. Here's the question. Have you put your life in God's hands? Or is your life pretty much still in your hands? You ask God for some help every now and again, but pretty much your life is in your hands. Or have you made the choice to put your life in God's hands? It's very different. Basic, fundamental, foundational choice that everyone makes and that we make really on a regular basis. And the picture that is given here for us to understand this is a sheep and shepherds. And if you've been coming to church for a while, you've probably heard somebody give a sermon in the way they talk about how dumb sheep are, and that's us, and all that stuff. Well, I'm not going to go into all that. Let's just suffice it to say this. Sheep are not the most self-sufficient animals that ever have existed, okay? And this picture is, you can act like a sheep who doesn't have a shepherd, which is bad news. I don't know a lot about livestock, but there's a guy who wrote a book years and years ago who knew a lot about sheep, Philip Keller, and this is what he said. Sheep do not just take care of themselves. Sheep require more meticulous care and attention than any other class of livestock. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know this, that you and I can choose today whether we're going to live today like we're a sheep without a shepherd, or whether we're going to say, the Lord is my shepherd. I've got one. My life is not resting. It's not all up to me. That's a choice that you can make. And here's one way to do that. When you start to worry this week, worry just starts to creep in about whatever it is. You can choose to stop at that moment and say, listen, I am not a sheep without a shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. And so, Lord, I'm worried about my kids. Could you protect them when I can't? You say, no, that's not all up to me. I'm going to just ask. Lord, I'm worried about my job, and I don't have control over some decisions that are being made, but I'm worried about what might happen if, and you say, well, I'm acting like a sheep without a shepherd, running around. Lord, I trust you with whatever happens. You can do that. If you, Lord, I'm worried about a decision that I make. I don't know what the implications could be bad. I can't tell you how many times I pray this prayer. God, make me smarter than I am. Right? Give me wisdom that I don't have, because I need it right now. I pray that prayer all the time. You would just stop the worry and say, that's like a sheep that's acting like they don't have a shepherd. I do have a shepherd. And the Lord is my shepherd. And I'm going to act that way. That decision will make a difference in our lives. Because the first one is, the Lord is my shepherd. That's a choice. Second, David says, I lack nothing. The old version, you might remember, I like that definition too. It says, I shall not want. When both of those phrases are extremely interesting to me. Let's take the first one. First translation, I lack nothing. Yeah, right. I got all kinds of things that I lack. I could give you a big list of things that I lack. What are you talking about, lack nothing? Or, I shall not want. Yeah, right. Who are you kidding? I want lots of stuff. So what does this mean? See, it gets at this very, very important mindset choice of, am I going to be someone who lives my life focused on what I don't have or focused on what I do have? And you choose. It doesn't happen to you. You choose which way you're going to live your life. And David is saying, I choose my life to think about, to set my mind, not on what I don't have, but on what I do have. And look, I'm not going to go farther into it this week. Next week, we're going to talk all about the dangerous, destructive power of a desire always for more. So that's next week. Come back and we'll do that. But suffice it to say this. The deck is stacked against us in this way too. That there's an awful lot of money given to really smart people to make you and I believe two things. One, you don't have enough. And two, a little more will be enough. And that is not true. can I tell you? A little more will never be enough. A lot more will not be enough. That's true. And you know that in other areas of your life. If you just feed your appetite, does it miraculously go away forever? No. No. And if you don't monitor at all how you feed that appetite, it will be bad. A little more will not be enough. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Now, I love this one because what's the difference? What's the opposite of lying down? Running around. Anybody out there do some running around this weekend? Yeah, I was running around New York City trying to find an apartment for my daughter to move into next weekend. Yeah, so I was running around, running to Brooklyn or uptown, the whole thing. And I hear that from so many people. Yeah, what have you been doing? I just got to run around. I got a lot of running around to do today. Yeah, you said that. Yeah. And do you know that sheep apparently don't lie down very well on their own? This reminded me of, we used to do a live nativity here. Maybe some of you were coming at that time. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. I don't know. But we would have live animals, and they would bring sheep. And every once in a while, one of the sheep would get loose. You know, they'd have it like on a leash or whatever. And can I tell you what? Not once it happened was that sheep just lied down. Never once. You know what happened when the sheep would get loose? It would go crazy. Like it was possessed or something, you know? And it would run back, you know, and then buck up like this. It was the wildest. I thought it was funny because I wasn't the sheep handler guy. But anyway, the sheep do not on their own just decide to lie down and rest. And so this Philip Keller guy who knows a lot more about sheep than I do, he said the reason is they're worried. When they're afraid and they're anxious, they pace and they won't lie down. Some of you are, but if they knew and if they trusted their shepherd is there, they lie down and they rest. Why? Because there's nothing to fear in the world? Nope. Because they trust the shepherd. Some of you are putting dots together here. Some of us are exhausted because you're afraid to lie down. You're afraid to rest. Remember, I asked you, how good are you at resting? I don't mean sleeping. I mean being rejuvenated. How good are you at knowing what brings you refreshing in your life? Are you afraid to do that? Because that would mean you got to stop running around. That's a choice that you and I make. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. By the way, have any of you figured out that if you don't make the choice to rest, God will make it for you? Yeah, I would suggest you make it before he does that. Yeah. Last one. He leads me beside quiet waters, still waters, one of the translations says. Let me just take a little poll. How quiet and still is our world? Not very. More importantly, how quiet and still is your life? How are you with stillness? Do you ever just turn off the noise? Is there a way to do that in your life? Here's what I find a lot of times is we'll turn down the volume of our job or our finances or our family, and we'll just fill it in with some other addiction to distraction. It's a screen, it's an event, it's a something. And stillness is very rare, it seems to me, in our lives. And yet, stillness is connected with knowing God. If you want to get better at knowing God, you got to get better at stillness. And my challenge for you would be, how can you, this is a choice you make, turn off the noise? You know, in the Bible, they talk about fasting a lot. And usually we think about that with not eating. I would say in our day, there's a fasting that's way more important than that. And that would be just turning off the noise. It would be unplugging the screen. It would be stop, be still. Some of you were like, yeah, right, buddy. I don't know what your life is like, but I know that this is a choice that you could make, and it's connected to your spiritual health and mine. And so maybe, what if this week, when worry started to bubble up, you said, I'm not a sheep without a shepherd. I'm not going to act like that. What if this week you decided, I'm going to focus more on what I do have than what I don't have? That would change you. What if you said, I'm going to rest. I'm not going to do all the running around. I don't know, but I'm just going to not. Or you said, I'm going to carve out stillness sometime, 5 minutes. Well, we're going to do that for you right now. We're going to end the service by giving you some time just to be still. The worship team, I'm going to invite them to come back up. And we just want to give you a few minutes. Maybe you won't be able to find it any other time this week. Start planning for next week. But right now, you can be still. You can connect with God. They're going to do a song for us that is based on Psalm 23. Shelby's going to read some of Psalm 23 to us. And you have no other agenda right now than just to be still. Let me pray. Father, thanks for caring about us enough to know what we need to hear, what we wouldn't maybe figure out on our own. And I pray that your words, these words of Psalm 23, would resonate deeply within us as we're still and we want to know you in this moment. We pray it in your name. Amen.